Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope everybody's doing well. This is going to be the short version of the video for calibration. I have the longer video as well, so if you want to watch that, it's much longer, but I go step through every single step and then talk about what we should be looking out for and things like that. This is just going to be a quick rundown of the calibration that's inside of Orca Slicer. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So first things first, you're going to go up here to the calibration tab and you're going to see your menu. So what I'm going to be going over in this video is just this first part here. There's a more section for max flow rate and VFA. I will eventually get a video out on those two settings. I just haven't done it enough to be confident enough to guide you guys through that, but I've done these other settings plenty of times. Alright, so the first thing you want to do, and this is going to be with any new filament that you use, is going to be your temperature tower. This will also apply if you upgrade your hot end. So let's go ahead and get that going. So you have here all of the main filaments that most of us are going to use. PLA is going to be your most common, PETG, PACF, ABS, ASA, TPU, PETCF, and then you have your custom tabs, so you can do whatever it is, whatever material you want to do. But for most of us, it's probably going to be PLA and PETG. So we're just going to go through the PLA section. This is going to be your default temperature that it tries to run with. You can get the temperatures from your actual spool. It'll tell you where its minimum printing temperature is and what its maximum is. In most cases, this is going to be just fine, but in some cases, your filament might tell you to print it at a slightly lower temperature at maximum or a slightly higher temperature in the beginning. Double check that if you would like, or you can just leave it at default. I don't ever really change this, so that's totally up to you. So let's just click OK. This will actually load in what we're going to be printing. So the things to look out for on your temperature tower are a couple of things. So you want to keep an eye on these edges here. Once the print is done, of course, the little cone in the middle, the bridging that's going to take place up top, and the surface of your print. So right here where it says Orca, you want to look at that at the top as well as the bottom. This is the area that you're going to be looking at, and this is the area here that you're going to be looking at as well for your overhangs. So what you want to do, the best way to look at this is you want to look at this whole thing and see which one looks the best. It can be any one of these, but you want to make sure that there's very little drooping from the bridging that takes place. You want to make sure you have the sharpest cone, and you want to make sure that the cone also has the least amount of strigging. On the edges here, you're just going to look to make sure that the layers look consistent going up, as well as here. You want to make sure that everything looks very consistent. They won't be perfect on your first run, but you want to get them, you know, as good as possible. You also want to make sure the numbers are readable and they don't look all weird. And then once you select one, that's pretty much what you're going to set in your settings. And where you set it is actually going to be in here, in your filament. Obviously, you're going to select this area here. So this is the default it wants to print at, but I'll move it back to what I usually print at. It's between 220 and 215. The first layer should always be a little bit hotter than the rest of your print. That's just for adhesion, to make sure that you get a good, nice adhesion to the build plate. All right, so once you get the numbers you need, let's move on to the next step. Let's go ahead and get rid of this. So the next part's the flow rate. So this is in two parts. Pass 1, here it is. What you're going to be looking for here is smoothness of the top layer, as well as good consistency. So we just slice it so you can see what I'm talking about. It won't show it here, but what you want to do is When these print, you want to run your finger over it, check the smoothness on all of them. You never know which one is going to be best for you until you print it. And what you want to look out for is these layers here. Generally the lower you go, there's going to be more and more separation in between the top layers, or between the top layer. So these lines will be more and more visible, and what you want is less gaps. Less gaps in the top surface. So that could be +5 for you, that could be -5, it could be -10, it could be any one of these. This is going to be based on your machine, where your machine is located, and the temperature around your machine, as well as the type of filament. That could all affect how this comes out. What I like to do is I like to find the one that has obviously no gaps but feels the smoothest, even if the edges are a little rough, because you'll run the second part of this and that'll help with that as well. So for example, for me, 0 always has a little bit of gaps, and 5 has no gaps but the edges are a little rough, so I would always go with 5. And once you choose one, by default your flow rate here will be at 0.98. Mine's already been adjusted because I've already run this test and I know what works best for my machine, but yours will probably say 0.98 if this is your first time running through all of this. So the way you calculate this, there is a formula. The formula is easy to find. It's here in the calibration. You just want to go into tutorial. Once that loads in, it's actually right here. So this is your formula. So this number here represents what your value is in the flow rate. This number here will change depending on which one of these you select. So for example, mine usually is +5. The hundreds never change in this formula, so don't ever change those. And so since mine, for example, would be +5, if yours is +5, then this is your result. And that's what you need to plug into your flow rate setting in your PLA settings. So that's going to be your initial increase or decrease or whatever it is for you. And then once you do that, let's get this deleted. We're going to run the second part of it. This part of it should fine-tune it a little bit more for you. So the way that this one also works is the same as before. You want to find the smoothest with the least amount of separation in the top layer. 0, obviously it's your new value. This is what your new value is going to look like. And then it'll go down in increments of 1. Once you get to -5, you'll be back at square one where you were when you first started. So this -5 is your original 0. And then obviously if any of these looks better, then go with that. It'll adjust your formula accordingly. So let's say, for example, with mine, my best one is always around -1, -2. So to do the formula, let's pull up Chrome here, and let's take this formula, right, the base formula, and you can just do the calculations here on Chrome. It works perfectly fine. So my new value, right, is going to be 1.029, which is what I got with the +5. I'm going to go -2 because that's what, let's say, my printer is better at. Divided by 100, this is my new number, right? So what I like to do is I like to take the first 3 digits after the decimal point, so 1.008. You can always add the last 2 if you'd like to run it all, but I just like to have a very good consistency in what I do. So 1.008 would be, for example, my new value. So you go in, plug in your new value here, hit save, make sure everything's saved, your temperature, your flow rate, click save, and you're done. So now on to the next part of the test. or the next part of calibration. Pressure advance. Pressure advance, you can do a couple of things. Pressure advance, you can do the lines. 0.15 is usually what I like to end it at. I'll show you here the line. If you are a direct drive extruder, you want to make sure that's selected. If you're a Bowden setup, you want to make sure you switch it over to Bowden. That will affect the results of this. So this is what the lines look like. It'll say PA test, and then once you slice it, it'll actually show you everything. So what the printer will do is it'll start the line and then speed up, and then keep going, and then slow down, and then speed up again. And it'll do that. That's why you have these little markers up here. You can see them. And then you pretty much just select. So the line directly in front is the number you're looking at. The one underneath, I believe it goes down by 0.002. So each line in between is 0.002 down or up, whichever way you're reading this. So for example, this is 0. This is 0.02, 0.04, and so on and so forth. So 0.02, sorry, is what it goes up by. Got 0 down here, same thing. I don't know why it double did that. Oh, I see why. That's weird that it did that. But anyways, you find the number that aligns best with what you're looking for, and that actually gets put in here. So you want to make sure you check off the pressure advance thing, and then put in the number that you want here. However, warning to everybody: if you have a black build plate like I do on my K1 Max, or if you have a gold one like I do with my Neptune 4 Pro and my Bamboo Lab printer, it's very difficult to see these lines because they are very thin. They're just, one sweep. They're not double or triple or whatever. It's just one line. They are quite difficult to see. So what I actually prefer to do myself is to do the tower and hit OK. Now this requires a little bit of math because you will need calipers. So essentially what you're going to do is you're going to, once this prints, you're going to find the sharpest edge, or where it looks the sharpest. This will change as it goes up. You'll find the sharpest point on your print and measure it with calipers and see where it's at. And then what I like to do is I just like to go around and make sure that it's sharp all around in that area, because you will have areas that are really sharp and then it's just slowly going to round out as it goes up, and eventually you'll have really bad under extrusion towards the top. But yeah, this is easier to me. It does require some math, and I'll show you the formula for that in a second, but it's easier to see than the lines, in my personal opinion. So the actual formula for this is also within the tutorial. So here's the pressure advance. It shows you these are the lines that I'm talking about. This is what it looks like. It shows you the deceleration, the acceleration points. It's whichever line looks the best. So if you want to do it the way that I'm doing it, which is by printing this is what I mean by it looks really bad. Here's the formula. It's really simple. It's 0.002 times whatever you get from your millimeters. So here the person is doing 8. So you want to take that, and then you get your result, 0.016. Mine, I believe, was around 10, so mine is a different number. It's, or it was actually higher than that. But anyways, you end up getting the result. Once you do that, you input that information into here, and then you're pretty much done with that. That's pressure advance for you. Super easy. Sorry if my voice is a little low. I'm just trying to keep it down. It's late and my son's asleep in the next room. But once you do your pressure advance, the next test is going to be a retraction tower. I like to set this to 3. In most cases, Bowden setups, 3 is the maximum. When it comes to direct drive extruders, 3 is roughly around the maximum. Bowden setups, it can be a much larger number, but it goes up by 0.1, so you can see it. If you have a Bowden setup, I recommend looking up what the maximum retraction length should be and then putting that in here, and what the minimum is and put that in there, just so you don't do 0 and then a huge maximum and then you go up by 0.1. It takes forever. But anyways, this is for direct drive. 3 is the maximum. Here you are, and here it is. So why do I choose the maximum? Because the top actually will have a lot of stringing and the bottom will have some stringing, and this just helps you narrow down the area where there's little stringing. So right now, currently on mine, it's set at 0.5. So this is 0 here, this is 3. Now you can see the little ridges. Each one is a 0.1 increment, so this is 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5. This is where I had the least amount of stringing, and you want to confirm both sides, because you might not have stringing on one side, but you might have some on the other. And you can have some fuzzies. You can get rid of that with a lighter, with a little torch, with a heat gun. As long as it's a small amount, you should be relatively okay. So yeah, print that out. It's a small piece, shouldn't take very long. And that's pretty much all the actual calibration portions to this. The next part is just to make sure that you did everything correctly. Well, not correctly, but that you did everything as well as possible. And here it is. So this is just a tolerance test. Tolerance tests are great for making sure that your printer's printing as best as it can and with all your adjusted settings. So you can either use this little key that prints with it, or you can use an Allen wrench. I don't know the exact size. I believe it tells you in the directions here, all the way at the bottom. Here it is. It tells you what size you need to be able to actually do this. It tells you how to do it. So if you don't want to watch this whole video, just read this. It's actually really useful. But anyways, back to this. If you've done everything up to this point as best as you can, you should have little to no stringing in here, so you should be able to remove it from the 0.4 and hopefully put it in the 0.3 and 0.2, 0.1, 0.05. A 0, you probably might be able to get it in, but that's an exact fit, and when it comes to FDM printers, that's a very difficult thing to achieve, but it's not impossible. So my goal for all of my printers is usually to get it to the 0.05, which is, really good. 0.2 is acceptable. It's perfectly fine. Anything above 0.2 is not super great, because then you start to run into problems with pieces that are designed to fit into each other that aren't fitting, as well as putting, like magnets and things like that into something. Generally, it's going to be either a really tight fit, or you're going to have to modify the areas that you need to go in. But don't be discouraged. On your first run through all of this, you might just barely be able to get it into 0.2, possibly a super tight fit in 0.1, but that's okay. Just go back, start from the beginning. Do not reset your settings back to default. Just start from where you are currently and go through them one more time. That'll help you fine-tune everything. Go through it as many times as you need until you can get it into the 0.05 if you wish, or perfectly in the 0.1 with no issue. You can run that. You can run those calibrations as many times as you want until it's as perfect as you want it to be. I ran it twice and I was able to get it into 0.05 tightly. You can get it to the point where it just slides in nicely. I know if I keep tuning my printer, I'll be able to achieve the nice smooth insert, but that's totally up to you and the length that you want to go through this, the amount of times you want to do this until it's perfect for you. And yeah, this is essentially the end of it. You just want to repeat everything that we just went through until this piece here prints exactly how you want it, until any other tolerance or any other torture tests that you want to print the way that you want them to print. At the end of the day, you're going to be your harshest critic. So if you're happy with the results after the first pass, then all power to you. If you're not, keep it going. You'll eventually get there. and you'll eventually be happy with where you are. So this is it. Keep all of your settings as default. 0.2. All of these settings here should stay at default for this. The higher you go, obviously, the finer the layers are, the more details you'll get, and so on and so forth. But if you can get it at 0.2 to do what you want, you're going to get it at any other, whether it's 0.16, whether it's 0.08, 0.12, it'll work perfectly as long as you get the 0.2 done correctly. Everything else will work for you. I hope you guys enjoyed this shorter version of my video, and you guys find it useful. If you do, please subscribe, give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, tell me how I can make this better. Again, I'm sorry if my voice is really low, just trying not to wake up my son. But like and subscribe. I really appreciate the feedback, and there are going to be way more videos to come. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day or night, and I'll catch you guys here in the next one.